Well, welcome back to mylifeswalk.com. This is Brian Jones, and as always, I count it a pure joy to be back with you once again. I hope and pray that God is yet moving in your life, and your walk with Him is becoming closer and closer and closer, and that relationship that you've always wanted with Him is developing into something that you depend on every single day. So today, the topic is, whose life are you trying to fix? And it's interesting. The topic came from something that I observed the other day, and it fully related back to uh, who I am as a parent, uh, and just looking at my life back when I was young. And so I observed, and you can relate to this. Have you ever spoken with a young person, 17, 18, 19, and you see them making a mistake, a poor choice, a boy and a girl wanting to move in together, and you know, and they're engaging in sexual activity, or whatever that situation is, and you try to advise them and tell them, don't do that because uh, A, B, C, D, this is going to happen. It's going to ruin your life. You know. And if we're honest with ourselves, that advice that we give, usually, especially in this day and time, we're talking to our younger selves. We are telling that younger me, don't do that again. Now, we're talking to someone who is not us, but the advice that we give is to that younger self, our younger self, so that they don't do what we did. And, when you think about it, I mean, that's good advice. That's what we should be telling them. Hey, avoid this. This is what I did. You don't want to do that. But I also want you to think about your mindset when you were that age. And so that's why I pose the question, whose life are you trying to fix? When you give that advice, is it based on what you've been through and not wanting them to do what you did? I just want you to think about that as I go into my blog topic today. All right, so at some point, when we have children, we make a declaration that I want my children to have better than I had, or have more than I did. I want them to be better than me, and it's pretty common. That's what we want. We love our children, and we want them to progress to heights beyond the heights that we've achieved. We want to see them flourish and grow into people we always wanted to be. I want you to think about that. We want them to be the person we always wanted to be. And if you think about the advice that we give, especially as it pertains to some of the similarities that we've had in our own lives, that's pretty much what our desire is. We're trying to fix us, that young us, but doing it through them. Now, you may not have said those words exactly how I'm saying it, but if we're honest, isn't that what we want? We, we want to raise our children to be something we were not when we were younger. And we have to ask ourselves, who are we not, or who were we not? We were just young people. And I want you to Selah, which means to sit and calmly think on this. The motivation behind the advice that we give young people. Are we truly trying to fix our younger selves? Think about those things that our young people do. And let's just say your children. Think about those things that your children do that scare you to death when you see it happening because you remember what you used to do. And that is usually the motivation behind the advice that we give. We try to get them to see the pitfalls that we've already seen. Now, let me tell you a little bit. I have a son. He'll be 18 in a few days. And as his father, I've tried to give him and teach him about the realities of this world. And I try to instruct him to how life is soon going to shift, because the way he thinks about life now is it's not based in reality. He's had no experiences. He doesn't know. You know, he just got his first job, so that was the big thing: get his job because he wants to be independent. And think about when you were that age and you got your first job. When you went into it, it was about all the money you was going to spend on all the stuff that you wanted. But then you got that job, and then why are they taking my money? you know, who is FICA? Taxes, that's the reality that they've never experienced. So in his mind, and in most young people's mind, their thought of life is not based in reality. So I did my job. I'm trying to explain them that there are choices, especially for him as a young, soon to be 18-year-old black man, that there are going to be. Well, I guess it doesn't even matter what color you are. It doesn't matter what color you are. At that age, you're going to make choices in the next 3 or 4 years that are going to impact the majority of your life. I warned him about putting too much emphasis on girls and playtime and etc. And the pitfalls that lie ahead. I encouraged him to keep God in his life, in his heart, and to set goals for himself. All just because I know that what he thinks about the world right now is so far from what he's going to truly face. And some of these things I was so adamant about that as it pertained to his choices, like going to college and getting a trade or getting a trade, not having sex and the danger, getting a girl pregnant, being confident but not arrogant, putting your all into whatever you do, and being honest and honorable. See, all these things, it's all good advice. And we should be telling our young people that. Absolutely, without a doubt. But at times, for myself, I found that I was trying to control his young life. I wouldn't let him do certain things. I would just, you don't know what you're talking about. Just come down on him really aggressively, trying to control the path, And I forgot how my mind worked when I was soon to be 18. I remember my parents' mouths moving, but I heard little of what they said. And the more forceful the advice I would get at that time, the more I heard them just trying to stop me from living my life. I wanted to be free. I was 8. I just wanted to do what I wanted to do, and that is the typical mindset. The freedom train was coming, and I was gonna get on it, regardless of what they said. Yeah, I listened. I wasn't disrespectful. I heard everything they said. Yes, ma'am. Yes, I understand. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. All the while in the back of my mind, freedom, give us free. That's all you want. You just want to be free. You know. So honestly, my advice was centered around the poor choices that the young me made. The things that I was adamant about were the very aspects of my own young life that weren't present. Especially back then, when I think about what I was thinking about when I was 18. I did want my son, and I do want my son to be better than that young me. It was my way of trying to fix my own young life in my subconscious. When I really began to dwell into what motivated me, I was trying to fix him. I didn't want him to be me. So through him, I had to fix my young life in order for him to be better, which doesn't make any sense because he's not me. So I probably should have went about it a different way. And I think most parents can kind of relate to this. We give them the advice without that advice being related to our own experience as a young person. I probably should have told him. I'm sorry. I probably should have told him how I made an error when I chose not to continue my education or finish college. Because that created a harder path. I had to work more with my hands. I had to work harder to get those things that I wanted, those material things that I wanted. Because I didn't have that education, so I wasn't in a position to make the amount of money. Now, back then, of course, it was different. I mean, you could get a job at a grocery store, join the union, and you can take care of yourself. Well, it's not that way today. So maybe I should have told him how I was consumed with sex at that age and girls, and how ultimately his older sister was born when I was 21. Maybe I should have shared more of the details about my young path so that he can take that as me sharing a part of me instead of just being a parent who was trying to stop him from being free. Because those choices produced a harder road for me. And that's the message and the advice I was trying to give him. Maybe I should have told him how I was dishonest when I was young. I would hide things. I would cover up things. And then tell him how it produced sorrow and pain. Not only in my life, but in the lives of people around me. So when I think about the advice itself that I've been giving my son, I mean, it's good advice. But it was the advice for the young me. And I never told him the real stories behind the advice. So think about the advice I had given to my son. I was just thinking about, him coming to this point in his life. And the Holy Spirit brought this scripture to me. And it's one we all know. As parents, we should know. It's Proverbs 22:6. Train up a child in the way they should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Now, there is a great distance between being a child and being old. There's a lot of space in the middle of that. He is going to have experiences in here. Experiences that I will not be a part of. Some I will never know about. And there's also going to be consequences that he's going to experience that are going to ultimately lead him to the point in his life when all the advice I had given him will kick in and God will be there. If I taught him to trust in God and to lean on God when he was young, then at some point in his life, it's going to start to take effect, and it's going to start to show. And why not? Because that's how it did for me. Eventually, I've come into the knowledge because of how my parents trained me. I've now come into the knowledge of how to apply that, and it's starting to come out. That word that they implanted in me is starting to come out. So the moral of this story is we want so bad to keep our children from the hazards of the life that we lived and we saw. We don't want them to know what it is like to have to live in your car because of poor choices. We do our best to shield them from the reality. So I ask, whose life are you trying to fix? We forget that everything that we've experienced helped to build us into who we are today. You may have, so I'm reading the script, I got to work on this. You could have been hell on wheels. Let me just put it plain. Back then, you could have been like the terror of the town. But where are you now? And I have a question. Would you be the person you are right now, knowing God the way you do, without those experiences? Could I know how God could take the mess of my life and make it brand new without having a mess of a life? And these are the things we have to kind of step back and say, well, you know what? If I train them like the Bible tells me to, and I give them good advice, and I pray that they listen to the instruction that I give them, then I have to trust in that. I'm not saying that it's you do the hands-off thing. They're 18, they do what they want to do. You got to give them, you have to give them the truth. But we have to remember who we're talking to, especially if we're thinking about that younger us. Because the more we push, the more we get pushed back. Remember who you were when you were 16, 17, 18, 20, whatever. The more people came at you, the more you went in the opposite direction. So, we have to place, and this is my belief now, and it's always been my belief, but I put my children's lives in God's hands. So by doing that, I have to remember that if I do what God says, since I'm putting them in his hands, then I don't have to worry about them. I just have to know that they're going to make some of the same poor choices I made. But in the end, because I trust God with their lives, they're going to be fine. You can't fix the young you. We can't. We can't fix that young person that we were. And that is truly the motivation behind why we push our children so hard not to do those things. Knowing in your mind that you had that child at 16 and you pushing so hard as if they do that very thing, it's the end of the world. And it might have been hard for you. But the person that they love is the person that you became because you had that child at 16. So it's not the end of the world for them. No, it's not what's desired. We know we don't want them to struggle, but it's not the end of the world. Sometimes we get so broken down by our children doing the very same things we've done, and we forget that we overcame that, and it made us who we are. So we got to step back. We truly have to step back. Encourage them to do the right thing by telling them your truth about your wrong, about what you've done. See, they're going to need the real story, the details. We may not be able to help them avoid, we may be able to, we may be able to help them avoid a few missteps by sharing that story. But there's a lot of potholes out there. And I've scraped a lot of knees, scraped up all my knees falling into them throughout my life. Yet today, the experiences of all the poor choices and falls and missteps I've made allow me to understand the purpose behind why I had to go through that. To help somebody else and even to help them. But if I don't tell my son the real story, he hears that advice everywhere. So as I close this out, I want to share with you a story, a conversation that I had with my family, my mother and my siblings, and my brother, my father, I'm sorry. And she made the comment one day, we are nothing like our father as far as our work habit. You know, he worked 40 years and maybe missed one day of work. But then I thought about, well, I looked at his father, how he was raised. And they were raised to work. He had 3 brothers and 4 sisters. And before school they worked, after school they worked. That was what they were required to do. And then I asked my mom, I said, well, how can we be like him? I said, because I'm sure you and Dad made the same comment about, when you have your children, we want better for them than what we had. Well, you didn't make us get up before school and work after school. Yes, of course, the times were different. But those disciplines that my dad learned, he learned early. So when we begin to have our children, well, I ain't gonna make them eat peas or vegetables. Why? It's good for them. But see, we don't want to impose those things on our children. So how can they be the type of person that would be conscious about their health or have that work ethic if we don't pattern how we were brought up and pattern that onto our children? See, we want to take stuff out and think we're going to get the same result. It's like, God talks about taking the vessel and breaking it down, and putting it in the fire and getting it back to the clay. Now, if you did that and you want to make the same pot, and when you broke it down, you melted it down, you got back to that clay, and then you took some of it out and set it to the side and then try to make the same pot, it's not going to be the same. So that's what I was trying to explain to my mom. Like, well, how can we be as he is if you took some of the clay out? You didn't require us to be that kind of worker. You gave us a pass. Oh, it's too early. It's Saturday. So we have to understand that it is not about, we have to understand that we cannot duplicate ourselves by trying to fix somebody else. Because their experiences, we've taken some of the things out and then look at them and say, why are you not like me? And so the kind of point of that story is to say, hey, look, it's not about being exactly like someone else. We all have our own experiences. But the advice that we give to young people now should be with the understanding that they're going to make their choices. You know, compared to my father, of my 30 years of working, I probably missed about a year. You know, just poor choices on my part. I mean, that's how I looked at it. But now I realize that, you know what, I should have did it different. So we have to step back, like I said, and we have to understand that our children are going to make poor choices. And that doesn't condemn their lives if they do. We have to trust in the training that we gave them. Thank you, Mom and Dad. Because now where I sit, I am I can see the bigger picture. I understand now why my life was a mess. Because I can't share with you about overcoming a mess of a life if I never had one. It's not going to be effective to those people who are in their mess. So I want you to just step back and think about what God has done for us and get what God has allowed us to come through. And now when you look at your child, that 18-year-old young person getting ready to embark on their lives, just know that you've trained them as much as you can about as much of the right information you could give them. But they're yet going to make mistakes. And God willing, they will be better for them, a better person than that young you was, a better father than you were, a better mother, a better husband. Because those, we can't take away life's experiences. That's my point for my children. So anyway, it was a pleasure. I hope I didn't ramble on. I get I get so excited. But I hope you got the gist of what I'm trying to say to you. We can't fix their lives. We can't fix our young person, the life that our young person was. But we can guide them. And we can be there for them when they fall. Just like God has been there and others have been there for you when you fell. And you came out all right. So God bless you. And I'm going to continue to pray for you. And please continue to pray for me that God continue to use me to be what He calls me to be. Because believe me when I tell you, He brought me out of my mess of a life. And He made me brand new. God bless you. And I'll see you next time.